how long have you been doing stand-up comedy from your first, let's just say like the first time you can remember being in an open mic or being on a show?
Well, it's ironic that we're doing this podcast today because I believe this exact day, January 14th. I may be off by one day, it may have been January 15th, but that is my comedy anniversary. So it's been 13 years.
Well, happy anniversary to
And
you.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
My first that's my anniversary of my first mic where I really kind of like hit the ground running when I moved to New York. I lived in Washington, D.C. for a year before I moved to New York.
Yeah.
And I did one open mic at this club called Wiseacres that was adjacent to a hotel in was that Arlington, Virginia. And it was absolutely terrifying. And I hid out for 5 years after that, traumatized.
Right.
And then thought, no, man, I got to give this another go. I moved to New York to do comedy and was so terrified of giving another shot at an open mic that I did not do stand up for 4 years after moving here, even though that's what I moved here specifically for. So
Oh
I
my
did
God.
improv. Yeah, I did. I was like, I cannot be on stage alone again.
Right.
No matter how
Right.
prepared I think I am, I need to be surrounded by other people. So that's when I started taking improv classes at UCB, and I was on, a number of house teams over the years. And I was even on a puppet improv team for a while where I bought a $60 like hand puppet with a hand rod and everything. I had like this race car driver puppet named Vinny, and I kind of made him sound like Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. Like, oh, you broke my pussy finger. Like it was just this kind of stereotypical Guido dude, and I had no puppet experience at all prior to doing this. I was just like, yeah, I'll join a puppet. I was just throwing shit against the wall. But one of my improv groups, I was with this guy, Luke Cunningham, who's great dude, great comic. I don't know where he's at now, but he's written for all sorts of shows over the years. He wrote for the Tonight Show. He wrote for like Norm Macdonald's sports show, and he had been doing stand up for a number of years. And I would always kind of pick his brain at these improv practices, like I wanted to be in that world. I was stuck in this improv world, and I was very inconsistent. I had some great shows and I had some that were just a disaster, but it was
Yeah.
just like, have you done improv before?
I took one like 8-week course, and
Okay. All
that
right.
was it. Yeah.
So as it's heavily dependent on those that you're with, so
Right.
if you're with competent people, they can really lift you up. And if you're not, it can be a disaster. And I had so many humiliating shows where I would have family and friends come to, and they would just be like, what was that afterward? So many scenes where you just called upon to be like a dog or a baby or something, and you're just on all fours barking for the entire scene. You're like, this is fucking humiliating. I'm too old to be doing this shit. So it got to a point, any scene that called for a dead body, I would just fling myself on the floor, be like, I'll just be dead for the next 3 minutes of this scene. But yeah, so anyway, I kept picking Luke's brain about like, what's it like to do stand-up? Where should I go? Where should I go to a mic? And he was always kind of encouraging me. And then, so yeah, finally in January of 2009, that was like my first New Year's resolution that I ever really made. I was like, all right, I'm 26. I can't wait any longer. It's time to hit the ground running. And I did my first mic was called Super Ego at Parkside Lounge, which is on Houston Street. I don't know if it's still there. It's on Houston, like way over, like, by Avenue B or C even.
Right.
And again, it was awful, but I knew for some reason something clicked, and I knew that I could work at it and get better. So it was like, even though it was disaster, even though I completely ate shit, it was I had the bug, man, and I kept going.
That, for people that might have missed it, that is how terrifying stand-up comedy could be, that you would rather be a dead body on a stage or get into puppet work, something that you didn't have any experience with. You're like, I'd rather learn how to be a puppeteer than do this by myself. Like,
Yeah,
It's pretty,
totally.
yeah. And you make a great point. I won't stay on this too long to not bash it, but like improv is so dependent. I mean, obviously it's dependent on the people around you. And I really think that like really good improv is some of the best comedy that you'll see. Like if you get a
Absolutely.
group of people that are all familiar with each other and really locked in really quick, I think it's, it rivals some of the best stand up I think you would see. Because it really is improvised. But bad
Yeah.
improv is maybe the worst form of comedy that there is.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because there's nothing
It's
sadder than
embarrassing.
watching a group of people fail, you know?
Yeah.
At least if it's one
Yeah.
person,
It's a
you're like,
sinking
well,
ship.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So after
It's like watching
you
8 drowning people just pulling each other underwater.
right, yeah, you're like, I'd rather watch this one person die than all of them. Like I could
Yeah,
justify watching one person die. Yeah.
sure.
It's so sad. So when you start going to mics and stuff, like how long until you started to realize, did you have that? I feel like sometimes people start and maybe you have this for a little bit and then it goes away and then it comes back, sort of that blind confidence that like you just don't know that it's bad yet, because you don't have anything to
Right.
compare it to. Did you have that, or did you kind of know in the moment, like, this is really tough and this is hard and this isn't going where I thought it was going to go?
Well, this mic that I did, this super ego mic, I immediately. You want me to tell you one of the first jokes I did?
Please, yeah.
So stupid, so stupid. I was like kind of like a one-liner guy when I first started out. And
Really?
there were so many, I had written jokes for years and it just had notebooks full of jokes. And it was finally, I was like, all right, let me finally test some of these out. One of the first jokes that I did that I thought was going to be killer was like, I think it went something like, it's really rude if you see a woman that's wearing pants that are too tight and you point out that she has camel toe. However, I do like to go to the zoo and point at a camel's foot and tell him that he has human woman vagina. I thought that was going to be a killer, and just nothing. And I was like, all right, back to the drawing board. All right,
Right.
all right. And then I would see people go on and do well, and it was all the common link for the most part. I mean, there's definitely people that can do well with, quippy one-liners, but for
Yeah.
the most part, it really seemed to be like you got to be somewhat personal. You got to talk,
Yes.
you got to have your own viewpoint, you got to have your own experience somewhere where you're a place in your life that you're coming from. And fortunately, this mic, even though I ate shit time and time again, was very supportive. And I just kept, I was doing other mics, but I would always go back to this mic. And I started to kind of make friends there. And it became this very supportive thing where I would go there with like the same 4 or 5 friends every week.
Yeah.
And we were really supportive of each other. We would give each other notes. So that's definitely helped to have kind of a support system where like you knew that even if you ate shit, your friends were supporting you and wanted you to do well and wanted to help you out. And as far as mics go, this was a great one. It was just super high energy and supportive. So it took a while, but once once I figured out the formula of how to put a funny thought into a joke, it kind of clicked. And then I did my first show. This mic, the people that ran this mic did these bringer shows at New York Comedy Club, and my first bringer show was 6 months into doing stand-up.
Wow.
And again, I had a bunch of family and friends, and I fucking murdered. And to this day, probably one of the best feelings I've ever had on stage. It really was, because it was like, and especially like for my wife, I'm sure it was really hard because I didn't start doing stand-up until 3 years after we got together. So she went from having me around all day, every day, all night, to me suddenly being like, I do this now, and I'm going to be out every night, and no, it doesn't pay. If anything, sometimes I have to pay to do it, and I'll often come home at 2:00 in the morning, shit-faced, and this is what I'm doing now. So to be able to go on stage and show her that I wasn't completely delusional was a huge, a huge relief, you know, and to get off stage and have her be like, that was amazing. And my older brother, who's the first to sling shit and criticize, was like, dude, that was awesome. And I was like, man, if I can make him think that, I think I got something here. So
and you think like how important that probably was. If that show goes differently, we might not be having this conversation. You know,
sure.
like
Yeah.
you're just like, well, at least I tried it, but you're right. What am I doing? This doesn't make any sense to be doing this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when early on, it's so. Now you're probably at the point where bad shows come and go, and they suck, but you can't get out of it now. Like
Right.
I always think like it's too late to go to do anything else. It would just be too
There's no plan B. I have no
right.
other skills.
Right, exactly.
I was a dog. I went from high school to working at a plant nursery to dropping out of art school after 2 years to moving to New York and walking dogs for 12 years while I was pursuing comedy. And then I finally let the dog walking biz go. And now it's I got no fallback plan, man. I got no skill set in anything else. So doubling down all the way.
Yeah, you just get to the point where you go like, if I had to go in and interview for a job, it would just be a disaster. Like the resume would be very hard to explain. They're like, oh, that's great, you wrote for this roast, but I'm just not sure what you bring to H&R Block.
Right. They'd be like, yeah. Do you know? Can you navigate Excel? I'd be like, I can barely navigate the Notes app on my phone. So
right,
no,
yeah,
you don't want me.
It's wild though. Like when you're first starting, I feel like you're always on the precipice of like life and death. Like that show probably gives you, who knows how long, a year, 6 months, 2 years of excitement to run off of. Where you will tolerate some of these bad things because you go, well, I remember at New York Comedy Club I killed.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's those, when you've been doing this long enough, it's those small victories that keep you going, because there's so many crash and burn moments, so many moments of falling flat on your face where you just think, what the fuck am I doing? This was a mistake. So many times you just question all your life choices. But then you have those little victories, and it's like, it's like a checkered flag waving of like, keep going. You got this. That was proof,
Right.
So you need those moments. And sometimes there's a long stretch without those,
Right.
And I talk to guys that are really accomplished that still tell me that like every day there will be a slight passing notion of like, should I keep doing this? Is this worth it? But it's also another thing I was thinking is like, once you've been doing it long enough, your brain is just trained to think in jokes. Even if I was to like go get a job at Staples tomorrow, I'd be thinking of bits for the rest of my life, and I would just be the annoying guy in the break room. Just workshopping bits.
Just running material.
But,
yeah. Just I feel like we did this already. Yeah, we heard the whole thing about 3-prong binders. Yeah. What? Where are all the 4-prong binders? We get it. Yeah.
Yeah. We need more prongs. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned those crash and burn moments, and we can get into some of that a little bit. Like now, obviously you're an accomplished comic. You've done things that probably seemed, that you've done several things in your career. I think that when you're starting, you go, if I get just an ounce of that, I'll be happy, and you've done those things. But it does feel sometimes, did you have any moments in your career where you thought like, this is it, like this is the audition, this is the set, this is the showcase, the tape that's gonna do it for me, this is gonna change everything or gonna take me to the next level, and then it doesn't go well, and now you're just like, I guess that's it? Have you had any of those moments?
Honestly, luckily, most most high pressure positions that I've been in with shows or auditions with stand up have gone really well. Now, in terms of like auditions for, other shit, acting shit, disastrous. But stand up, like, and I had things happen for me. So I feel like sometimes you can have things happen for you too early, where it kind of gives you a false, not even necessarily a false confidence, but like I did Just for Laughs in 2013 when I was only 4 years into doing stand up. My first time auditioning, I had got new faces and I was over the moon and couldn't believe it. And it went great while I was up there. The shows I did went great. I came back that week, signed with a manager and an agent. I was like, whoo, baby, rocket ship to the moon. Now I just kick back and relax. And within 6 months, my manager lost her position because their East Coast branch of New Wave Entertainment, for budgetary reasons, just had to shut down. So she lost her job. And then a year after that, my agent, she jumped ship from her company and moved out to LA to become a manager. And I was like, will you manage me? And she's like, I've kind of got a full roster. And I was like, will I get picked up by anybody else at APA? And she was like, it was like a polite kiss off of like, listen, man, you're not really booking anything or making anybody any money. So sorry, you're out on your ass. And it was such a fucking low moment, but I'm glad it happened because it really made me realize like you cannot ever become complacent. When you get these opportunities and you get representation, you have to work 10 times harder. Like, yes, they can be a liaison between you and other industry professionals, but you got to bring something to the table, and I hadn't been doing that. I was like, oh, they'll take care of me. I just kick back and relax. I'm kicking ass. They got me. Right. They'll book all this shit for me and I'll be fine. But I have, I've definitely had shows. I wrote down one show that I did at the Creek. I got like a few that I can tell you about if you want.
Please, let's get into it.
I did this one show at the Creek. The Creek in the Cave, and was a place in New York City. I realize people listening to this now, the Creek shut down a couple of years ago. They've now reopened in Austin, Texas, and it's thriving. Shout out to Rebecca Trent for turning things around and kicking ass down there. But the Creek was like the go-to kind of like alt room in New York City for a long time. And I ran a show there for years. And that was really kind of like my home base for a long time. I do mics there all the time. And they had a show at the very end of December in 2011. Remember when there was all this talk of 2012 and the world coming to an end. So they did this show where every comic got 2 minutes to do like, this could potentially be your last time on stage. So make it count. This is your last opportunity to tell jokes on stage. It was like an end of the world, like apocalyptic show.
Right.
And I came up with this idea of like being so panicked about having only 2 minutes to tell jokes that I went on stage with a box of popsicles. And I was like, you know what, guys, like my jokes, I just don't know. I couldn't come up with anything. So I'm just gonna read you as many popsicle stick jokes as I possibly can in 2 minutes. So I open up this box of popsicles. And of course, the joke isn't on the handle part. It's on you have to consume the popsicle to get to the joke. So I'm just up there. It's just like this ridiculous physical comedy shtick where I'm just devouring popsicles and, ice is, dripping down my chin onto my shoes. It's all over the stage. It's a fucking sticky mess. And I'm rattling off these stupid popsicle jokes and nobody's laughing at all. And I'm like 6 popsicles deep at this point. Like, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm bombing, and I'm like, out of a moment of desperation, I was like, what can I do to possibly try to get a laugh? And I turned my back to the audience and I pulled my pants down and I stuck one of the popsicles between my ass cheeks, and dead silence, nothing, not a peep. And then a beat goes by. And then from the back of the room, I just hear, God damn, that's a hairy ass. And the whole room explodes in laughter. And they weren't even lighting people. Like a timer would go off when your time was up. So that guy got that line out in just the nick of time. And then the timer went off and I had to fucking pull my pants up and slink off stage with my head hung low, just feeling that was definitely a moment of like, I hope the fucking world ends because I can never show my face on this stage again. That was such humiliation.
I cannot believe you're here still. Honestly, God, I mean, I can't believe that you didn't just walk out of the creek, get into the subway station, and lay on the tracks after that. I mean, that is so
Right?
like
Hey, man.
that is wild. That is, but that's like, I don't know. I feel like now that would kill. Like if you did that and like, I don't know. If you,
I'm ahead of my time, huh?
yeah, that you know, or that's like like when Andy Kaufman was pretending to be a professional wrestler and like coming out with like the neck brace and stuff. I mean, that took a lot
Right.
of, or he was going up there and like eating ice cream and like doing his set. Like that's
Yeah.
so. Like I mean, there's just so many places to go here. Like was your butt wet?
Yeah. I mean, it was cold. Yeah, it was cold. It was wet. It had, it was riding home with a sticky wet ass. I mean, it was bad, man. It was humiliating. And it's those moments like that where like, and that can happen with a written joke too, where like it still happens to me all the time, even after all these. And I think that's what keeps me going, is that I feel like I still haven't completely decoded it. You know what I mean? Like if you
Right.
felt like everything that you wrote was going to kill on stage, me personally, I don't think I would have as much incentive to get on stage and try new stuff. I mean, that's part of the thrill of knowing that this might completely fail. Even no matter how convinced you are that this is hilarious and like, oh, this is a no-brainer, this is going to kill. Like just last week, I did a whole bit about, I didn't get COVID these last 2 years, but I did get bed bugs. And I had this whole bit about getting bed bugs that I thought was going to kill. And it didn't. And I'm still working on it, but it didn't. And I was convinced. I was like, this is gonna be fucking mic drop joke, But it's that is particularly for myself, that's what really keeps me going, is like it doesn't matter how convinced you are. And then sometimes you'll have a joke, you're like, this might work, and then you go on stage and you tell it and it destroys, and you're like, really, that? And it's constantly that decoding of like what works and what doesn't that keeps me going. But there's like two more like really real clincher moments for me that I want to tell you about. One was I did this show also, like when you're starting out, like you're not getting paid, you're getting paid in drink tickets, like you'll go wherever the fuck somebody tells you to go. And
Right.
I don't even remember who booked this show, but it was at a Thai restaurant in Far Rockaway.
Oh my God.
So this was me and three buddies did this show. It was me, Matt Wayne, Anthony DeVito, and Greg Stone all took
What a crew.
the C train all the way out to Far Rockaway. And this is also like when I first started doing comedy, I was active hitting mics every night, but it was also like, there's a big social element to it too. And I was drinking at all of these shows, like coming home hammered, often drinking several drinks before getting on stage. And this was no different. We all had like, tall boys and paper bags on the ride out there. We're like, we're going to have a fucking night. This show's going to be a disaster. We don't care. So we get out there and it's like a 20-minute walk from the train, and we're like blasting Heart's greatest hits on my cell phone at like max volume. Had no idea that we were walking through the projects to get to this venue. So it's just like four annoying drunk white dudes listening to 80s, 80s rock ballads,
Right.
just stumbling around on the way to this gig. We get there, and it's basically an ambush show in this Thai restaurant. So there is a stage there, but nobody really knows that there's going to be a comedy show. And it's hosted by this guy who seems completely normal when we get there. He's like, hey, thank you guys so much for coming. So I'm going to do a little bit of time as like a character up top, and then I'll bring you guys up one at a time. He winds up taking like a one of those like rubber dog mask things that just goes around your nose and mouth, like when you have with a kid, right, like an elastic string back. That's his entire costume. He puts on this dog thing over his mouth, so you can't even see his mouth moving. And he goes on stage, and he basically sounds like the Mad Hatter. He's like, hi, everybody. I'm Sheila, the dog-faced lady. And everybody's like, what the fuck? We're just trying to eat a meal here with our families. And now there's this fucking mentally ill dude on stage telling he's Sheila the dog faced. It was completely nonsensical. I couldn't even call it alt comedy because it just wasn't, nothing was connecting, you know?
Right.
And so he brings us on stage one at a time, and everybody was basically just politely ignoring us, just being like, oh, we just want this show to be over. Like, we did not come here for this shit, you know? And we were all hammered too. So we were bombing, and it was just an absolute disaster. But the worst part was on the ride home, I was so drunk on the ride home that I wound up hanging upside down from my knees from the handrail on the train. And this was back in like 2011, I'd say. And I had just gotten a new iPod. And I was, all this drunk shenanigans on the train. I get home and I'm like blackout drunk. I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. I'm looking for my iPod. Cannot find my iPod anywhere. And then I start getting all these texts from Anthony and Greg and Matt. I was like, dude, last night was so ridiculous. What the fuck was that? Dude, you were so wasted on the train. And Matt sent me a picture of me hanging upside down on the train from the handrail. And then I zoomed in, and on the floor of the train right underneath me was my iPod. It had fallen out of my pocket when I was hanging upside down and was just left there on the train. So my wife had just bought me this iPod as a birthday present. So it's like, good Lord. Last night was like a humiliating enough experience on its own. Now I got to tell my wife that I got drunk and hung upside down on a handrail and lost her birthday present to me. You know?
Did you tell her?
I did. Yeah. And she was, she wasn't too happy.
Yeah, she wasn't happy that you got drunk and pulled a Peter Parker on the subway on the C train. Coming from Rockaway.
I was like, no hands though. That's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, but wait till you see the picture. Yeah. Oh my God, that's a gig. You lose an iPod, you're losing money on this show.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
a loss.
That's what I mean, man. This shit costs us money sometimes. But the biggest one that I'll tell you about was in 2016, I did Conan. It was my first late night gig, my first TV appearance, really, unless you count like Axis live at Gotham, which no one has Axis. I don't know if you remember that show, but it used to be.
That,
and you tell all your friends and family, I'm going to be on TV. What channel? Axis. What the fuck is Axis? No, it doesn't count. So like June of 2016, I do Conan. I go out to LA. I feel really good about my set. I've run this set a million times. I do it. I feel great. It's a thrilling experience. I felt like I knocked it out of the park. I get back they had a driver bringing me to and from my hotel. I get back in the car and I'm like, hey man, let's go to In-N-Out Burger. Burgers on me. Let's celebrate. So the driver brings me through the drive-through. Got a bunch of burgers. We're eating burgers on the way back to the hotel, shooting the shit. And he drops me off. And usually when people have done a late night spot, there's some sort of like viewing party or something, or like they go hang out with friends to watch it, But I didn't really have that many LA connects at the time. And I just kind of wanted to just decompress in my hotel room and pop an edible and just, chill and watch it on my own. So I'm there and I get back. It's like 4:00 in the afternoon. Because they tape pretty early. Or no, it's a little bit later at this point, maybe like 6:00. And I pop this edible and I'm planning on, riding out this edible, and then the show will come on at 11 and I'll be, be over the high. I'll be able to watch with a clear head. Totally forgot about the time difference, between LA and New York. So Conan does not air at 11 o'clock in LA. It airs 3 hours earlier.
Yeah.
So at like 7 o'clock, I start seeing all these ads on TBS, like, coming up next on Conan, we got UFC fighter such and such, Kumail Nanjiani, and comedy by Doug Smith. Coming up next on Conan. I was like, wait a second, coming up next? Like, I need like another fucking 3 hours. Like, this hasn't even fucking kicked in yet. Like, I don't want to watch myself on television for the first time, fucking out of my gourd,
Right.
So sure enough, right as the show comes on, right as Conan comes through the curtain, this edible just kicks in hardcore. And it was like a, it wasn't even that potent of, it was like a 50 milligram Tootsie Roll edible that a buddy, that Matt Wayne, gave to me before I left for the trip. And it was one of those things like, buddy, just, eat half at a time. I know it doesn't sound like it's that powerful, but they're pretty heavy. Just eat half. And of course I popped the whole thing. So Conan comes through the curtain, and this thing it's just like a mule kick to the head. I'm just completely blotto. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't watch this. I can't watch this in this state. Fuck. I'm just pacing around the room. I'm chugging waters, slapping myself in the face, trying to sober myself up. I haven't even showered yet. I still have like a full face of makeup, all I want to do is like, I just really want to sober up. So sure enough, that does not happen. My segment is introduced and I come out on stage, and I don't know what happened, but as I'm watching myself on television, I heard no laughter at all, like nothing, just fucking crickets. And I was like, oh my God, I'm bombing. I'm bombing on national television. I thought this set was a slam dunk. I thought I knocked it out of the park. I don't hear any fucking laughs for the entire 6 minutes. And it ends, cuts to commercial, and I'm just like, I sit down on my bed and I'm just kind of staring into space and be like, this was all for nothing. The last 7 years of my life was a fucking waste. I was delusional. I was completely delusional. I just embarrassed myself on national television. Now everybody knows it. This is a fucking disaster. I'm going to go back to New York. I'm going to be walking dogs for the rest of my life. My heart was just fucking pounding out of my chest. It was the most terrified I've ever been. Just feel like such a fraud and a phony and a fuck up. And I lie down in my bed and I'm just like having like this apocalypse now moment, just watching the ceiling fan. And all I want to do is like get up and get in the shower, but I'm trembling so violently that I'm like, if I don't want to slip and die in the shower, crack my head open in the shower, then they're going to discover my body the next day of the guy that just ate shit on Conan, like. So the only thing I wanted to do was shower, but I couldn't do that. So I'm just lying there. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I was just paralyzed. And finally, like 2 hours goes by, and I really still am convinced I'm going to die. And I'm like, I cannot die alone in my hotel room the night that I bomb on Conan. So I pull on some sweatbands and I shuffle down into the lobby. And I was like, at least if I die, I want to be around. People will discover me at the moment that I die. And there's this Disney World field, middle schoolers on this Disney World field trip come filing in. I'm like, oh, good. Thank God there's a lot of people around. If I collapse on the floor, somebody's going to find me. And I'm still just chugging waters. Finally, it start to come down a little bit, go back up to my room. And a few texts start rolling in, like obligatory texts, like from family and friends. Like, hey, man, great job. You killed it. Still, I'm like, no, they have to say that. Of course they have to say that. You're not going to tell me I bombed. And all I want to do is to be able to watch this set again, like with a clear head, a fresh set of eyes. And I keep Googling it. It's like 2:00 in the morning now. I keep Googling, wondering when they're going to post it. Nothing's up yet. Nothing's up. Finally, I fall asleep for like a couple of hours. I wake up at like 5 a.m. and I Google it. And it's up, and I watch it, and I hear some laughs. And I was like, okay, I think that was okay. And I watched it again. I was like, no, I think that was good. That was good. And I watched it again. I was like, no, that was all right. And then more text, more and more texts start rolling in. And then I start getting texts from other comics, like comics that are a few years ahead of me, like Mark Norman and Joe List were texting me. And I was like, whew, all right. I was delusional about the delusion. You know what I mean? Like I did okay. But that moment, that night, was the existential crisis and panic that I went through was so awful that the bad far outweighed the good. This is like the most momentous occasion of my career, and the way that I went about watching it and taking in this experience could not have been more disastrous. So it was this fucking roller coaster of emotions, of just like being so excited, feeling so empowered, like I did it, I made it. Again, like I'm moving up in the world. And then just this low moment of just like, oh my God, what the fuck have I done? I just embarrassed myself in front of everybody. I'm a fucking fraud. So that was definitely the worst I've personally felt after a set was that by far.
Dude, that is the craziest story I may have ever heard. I mean, that is like, first of all, I mean, think about the experience for those Disney middle schoolers that were on a field trip that just see some
See
dude
me
in
rocking back and
sweatpants
forth.
chugging water with makeup on. Their teacher's probably like, "This is what
Yeah.
showbiz does." You know, that guy was supposed to be the new Seinfeld. You know, like he was gonna be an extra in the Avengers. And look at him. He's a mess. I mean, you basically took like, you know, in like a Yellowstone type show or like a Dances with Wolves type movie where like the hero has to go on like a ayahuasca trip with like the chieftain to see all his different paths, and he has to, that's what you did.
Yeah.
Like you took the trip, you went down the worst road possible, and then it was all just in your head. That is crazy. Like
Right.
like you,
Dude, it was to the point where I threw the edible wrapper in the trash, and then I thought, no, if I die, I don't want there to be any mystery of how I die. So I took the edible wrapper out and I put it on the bedside table. I even wrote a note on a piece of paper. Like I was preparing for the cops to find, or the hotel cleaning staff to find me dead. I wrote a note on a piece of paper saying I ate a 50 milligram marijuana edible. I put that on the bedside table. And again, I was, full face of makeup, just lying there in my boxer shorts, even thinking like, well, at least if I die, it's going to be less work for the mortician. You know what I mean? Like,
right. They
I already got the makeup on.
Yeah. They might just have to touch it up a little bit.
Yeah. But I was totally convinced I was going to die. Yeah.
And you didn't you didn't call anybody. You didn't.
No. I just wallowed in this misery completely alone. And it was almost like I was afraid. It was like I was afraid to admit what I had done. I felt such shame, It was just like the worst, most negative feelings you can have about yourself, just all funneled into one experience.
I mean,
of course, I told my wife about it when I got home. She's like, "Why didn't you call me?" And I was like, "I couldn't even navigate the phone. I just was too terrified to do anything. I didn't feel like I deserved to be talked off a ledge. I just wanted to let myself fucking die in peace." It was bad, man. It was unreal. And I couldn't touch edibles for like a good 2 years after that, especially not these particular brand of Tootsie Rolls,
I was surprised you're still eating candy after that. I would be so afraid that like anything I took that looked like that would do the same thing. Holy God. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, your heart must be in great condition. Like you must have a great cardiovascular system to be able to take on all that stress, because a lot of people have died under a lot less duress, I mean,
right.
That is wild,
dude.
I mean, so after you come to and you had the wherewithal to go, oh, I was just really high. That's what it was.
Yeah. It was almost like, and I've had that experience before, like at concerts. It's almost like I get like sensory overload. There's times where if I'm too high at a concert, I won't hear anything. It's just like, it's almost like this temporary deafness.
Right.
And it's like I had that, but just for my laughs, the laughs that I thought I was not getting, like I heard my jokes. So from my perspective, it looked like I'm on stage holding a microphone with a smile on my face, slinging these jokes. And then I just pause to nothing, and then into the next show, pause, nothing. And I was like, oh my, I look like such a fucking asshole up there. Like I'm waiting for the people to laugh, but they're not fucking laughing. And it was,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh
man.
my God. Wow. That, and I mean, I'm sure you've told this story before. You had to have explained this to people.
Yeah.
You're a therapist, maybe. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
Did you clean up the note at least in the wrapper? Did you take that?
Oh yeah. I tore those up. Yeah, I think I stuffed them in my pocket. I don't even think I left it in the room.
You were trying to clean up a murder that didn't happen. That's what you were stuck cleaning up. Yeah, they're like, I think that guy killed somebody. Like
But again,
it was supposed to be me.
my guilt was such that I was like prepared to feel bad for dying in my bed. You know what I mean? Like, let me make this easier for everybody. You know, if I'm gonna be the guy who's burdening and ruining everyone's day by being the first thing they discover in the morning, like,
Right.
let me at least make their job a little easier. You know?
Right. Yeah. It's bad enough when people put all their towels on the ground, let alone there's
Yeah.
a dead guy in the bed with makeup on.
That's what I should have done. I just laid down underneath the bathroom counter with the
Yeah,
towels.
right. Yeah, we won't be reusing these. Yeah, that's how you know we won't be using him tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Well, I mean, what, like you said, what a roller coaster. You basically went through, I mean, truly every comic's worst nightmare
Yeah.
in your mind and came out the other side. I mean, you're like Kevin Costner, you know, like this would be if there was going to be a movie, he would probably play you in this part, you know? I mean, that is really something. My God.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't die though. That would have been
Yeah,
horrible
me
because
too,
then
man.
you
Me
actually
too.
did well. Like it would have been
Right?
if you
Yeah,
would
yeah,
have
yeah.
bombed, okay. But like you do well and you don't even know you did well, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the
And
perfect
also,
crime.
and yeah, and like, you know, not to make light of it, but like, you know, so many people in showbiz die alone in hotel rooms. That's always been a huge fear of mine. You know, it just happened to Bob Saget. He's one of many that has been discovered dead in a hotel room.
Right.
So of course, my mind is just thinking, okay, I'm just going to be another statistic, just another
Right.
fucking fuck up degenerate, drug addicted, even though it's just a marijuana edible, drug addicted fuck up comic who dies in his hotel room alone. You know, I was
Oh
like, I
my.
can't be another statistic.
Right, right. You're
So
like people are gonna, well, you know, and it's not even, it wouldn't be in a thing of like we're like he had so much potential. It's like he's funny. Like he look how funny he is. He was on this and he just, I mean, he's
yeah.
dead now. And you know, from a weed Tootsie Roll. It would have been I mean,
Right.
unprecedented. You've been the first person to die from weed Tootsie Roll, probably.
I know. I should have wrote on that note. I'm sorry, I can't handle my shit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Usually I take half. Matt
I'm
Wayne told
such
me
a
to take
pussy.
half. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Matt Wayne gets arrested. There was like, I
Yeah,
can't
right.
believe he killed Doug. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, before we get out of here, I mean, it's hard to go into a lower point than that. So it won't doesn't have to be a lower point, but maybe it's before or something you do now or you used to do, whatever it is. You have not that low of a point because that's a hard one to
Yeah.
come back from.
Can't top
But
that.
you have a low point, you have a bad show, bad set, bad, even just a bad streak of shows sometimes you get, you know, where nothing's
Yeah.
clicking. What do you do? Do you have a habit or a ritual or even a vice that you do to sort of make yourself feel better or get yourself out of that? And you go, well, this at least softens the blow a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I often get hung up on like if a new joke isn't working, I beat myself up and be like, man, I'm not making any progress. You know, like I've stalled out. I've peaked. I constantly think I've peaked. You know, like that's all the good stuff's behind me. And then like so I get hung up on doing like older bits, even if they're only like a couple months old. And then so I just have to remind myself if I'm doing if next opportunity I get to do a show, it's like, why don't I allow myself to feel better rather than pushing through this bit that's not working, that I can't figure out how to decode, and rather than push myself to do this when I know it's not there yet and I know it's not going to get a laugh and I'm going to feel bad about myself, why don't I fucking take it easy on myself and allow myself to do these older bits, even at risk of feeling again like a fucking hack, and then reminding myself like, well, you're not a hack. These are not bits from 10 years ago. These are
Right.
bits from a few months ago that nobody in this crowd has heard. It's not like I'm going to tell these bits like, I just heard this guy do this on the last. It's like nobody's paying that close attention. And
Right.
I think that's what I have to remind myself of a lot is I think I've talked to a lot of comics that get hung up on wanting to do new bits, especially if they feel like other comics that they respect and look up to are watching them. Like, I got to be doing new stuff. They see them working on new stuff. It's like, no, they're going to respect the fact that you are valuing your time on stage and you want to do as well as you can,
Right.
And there is absolutely no shame at all in doing bits that work and just selling the shit out of them, being enthusiastic and putting all that you can into them. So that's usually what I do. Like the last set I did was not great. So like the set that I'm going to do tonight, rather than try to muscle through this fucking bed bug joke that I keep trying to work on, I may throw it out by like my third show tonight, but the first show I'm taking it easy. I'm going to do some tried and true stuff. Maybe add a couple tags in there, and just you gotta find ways to build your confidence back up,
Right.
And if that's true, they're still your jokes. It's not like you're cherry picking other people's jokes, It's like it's okay to lose confidence in your bit that's not working, and then be like, okay, let me do these bits that are working. Let me build myself back up again, so I feel like empowered and I know what I'm fucking doing. Let me give myself the confidence that it takes to sell this bit or formulate or write this bit in a way that's going to work. So that's what I try to do. Just not get in my own way and not get too prideful, I think is key.
Right. Yeah. It's so easy to let I use this like term loosely, like let like the artist take over, like, well, I have to develop this and you still have to be an entertainer. You still have to make sure the show is good, especially if you're on a good show. Like, you can't be the person that just goes, well, I'll just, work on some new stuff, and then whoever's after me has to pick it up. You do have a responsibility to the show to keep it going.
Yeah, there is definitely some crowds out there that like seeing comics work on. There's some real comedy nerd crowds that like seeing people workshop shit on stage, but for the most part, they just want to see you do well. They're not going to be impressed by you doing all new bits that are just crashing and burning. Like, hey, that guy's fucking brave up there. He's willing to fall on his face. Like, no, they're still there to be entertained and laugh,
Right.
And if you're doing shit from a couple months ago that they haven't heard, they're not paying attention to your shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm at the level where I've had a bunch of fucking specials on Netflix, and then I go up on a Brooklyn bar show and I'm telling jokes from those specials that everybody's heard. And even still then, people get too hung up in thinking everybody's heard my stuff. Nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody knows who you are. Even the biggest people, there's plenty of people that don't know who you are. And even if they do know who you are, they don't know your fucking bits,
Right. Just do something that's going to be funny, and it's going to be good and make you feel good and make them feel good,
Right.
Oh man, I really appreciate your time, and this. I appreciate you making sure you told those stories, because there's really no going back from that. So
hey man, there's nothing I love talking about more than my own personal failures. Seriously.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Nothing really brings you back to those moments than having to relive them. It's fun. Where can people find you? Where can people see you? Let everyone know.
Okay. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, trying to get those TikTok numbers up. I don't know how the fuck you do that. All those platforms at Who Doug Smith. And then as far as shows, I've got a couple new shows that I'm producing. One here in Brooklyn at a place called Green Lung Studio. It's this beautiful new performance space. It's on 9th Street in Gowanus. It's called Super Fun Comedy. Me, Kevin James Doyle, Amanda Van Nostran. Our first show is January 26th at 7 o'clock. We got Allison Leiby, Chanel Ali, Mike Brown, Napoleon Emile. We got a great lineup. And then on February 9th, I'm doing a show with Anthony DeVito, Casey James Salango, and Chris Gethard at Caveat on the Lower East Side. And that show is called Sad Sacks, and it's all us doing portions of our solo shows that we're working on. And I'm working on a show all about my upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness. So it's a lot of depressing tales, but hopefully, it's a comedy show, even though it's dealing with darker subject matter. So we did our first one in December. We had to pull the plug on our January one because of the Omicron bullshit. But yeah, we're back up and running February 9th. So yeah, it'd be great to have some folks come out to those.
Right on, man. Well, I mean, congratulations for surviving Conan and for being here today. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking about it.
Yeah, no problem, man. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.